Well, I'll start by asking Barbara to explain a little bit about the Wild Mountain Collective. I think that what we're here to hear about today largely is this new initiative, and so there's a lot of energy that's gone into this new project. It's a project of BMCAN, and it was founded by Barbara. So could you explain to us what it is and what inspired you to start the Wild Mountain Collective?
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, well, as you know, I'm not an artist. I mean, I've dabbled a bit. I made a few sculptural pieces myself, so I've always loved sculpture.
Okay.
I've bought art. I have art in my house, so I'm one of those people who's a lover of art rather than a professional producer of art. And, for my sins, I've been a sociologist of technological innovation. So I guess what kicked me off, actually, was I read about Paul Kingsnorth, and he set up the Dark Mountain Project, and he calls himself a recovering environmentalist. And he said the reason he is this is because he realised, a bit like what you were saying, Nick, before, that all that work he'd done for years as an environmental warrior got lost in the sort of policy debate about how we develop alternate technologies to carry on with our sort of high consumerist lifestyle.
Right.
So, and I just want to read you a quote because this is what set me off. He said, "Looking back, trying to find the river, I see now that the story winding itself through my work is the breaking of the link between people and places, between the past and the present, between instinct and reason, and all the consequences that have ensued and will ensue. I see that it is the silencing of what Thomas Berry called the great conversation between humans and the rest of nature, and what this means." And that kind of set him off on his path. So I thought, well, I'm in BMCAN. Can we do something here? Here I am in this huge Blue Mountains World Heritage Area, one of the precious heritage protected wilderness areas in the world. Can we do something here like this? So I thought, well, actually, I'm a recovering techno-optimist.
Right. So what you've described is definitely in association with place. So I think you're seeing, the Wild Mountain or those sort of arts practices as being associated with place. And as you said, we're in quite a unique environmental place. Now, I would like to get back to that later because I have other interpretations about how to respond to the environment that perhaps aren't quite as specific to location. But just to sort of give us a picture of what's happening, could you just describe what you think the Wild Mountain Collective is or what its potential could be?
Yeah, so, I guess it's a bit influenced by my background. I've been a policy wonk, and I've done lots of work in the not-for-profit sector, both here and in Papua New Guinea, and in Tibet for that matter. And so I thought, I chose the idea of collective, because I thought, let's pull together a people from across the arts, but not just the arts, also thinkers, philosophers, and see if we can co-create something that enables us to celebrate and explore this ethos about a narrative about what it means, to live in this kind of area, and to celebrate it through the arts rather than through sort of environmental activism or policy development. So that's why I set it up. And then Wild Mountains, because I'm sort of interested in wild as both, it's a heritage wilderness, but also the inner wild, the part of our inner spirit that's not being dominated by the sort of techno-capitalism, consumerism. So for me, it's got this double resonance.
I agree, and that's partly what attracted me as well. Just the term Wild Mountain Collective is, it's an inspirational idea in that it's not contained, it's not describing what the outcome is, but there's enough there to inspire broad interpretation. And so just to get back to that thing about being in the World Heritage Area, I respond to the Wild Mountain concept as something quite broad, and I think that I guess there's a lot to be examined there. So if we just think about nature to start with, nature can really, we are part of nature. The humans are nature, and our processes are nature, and it's very difficult to sort of imagine anything which you can't be natural, whether it be synthetic or not, because they're a product of who we are. So I think nature is more about life, and and process and living. And what I would like to emphasise is that idea that, you know, nature's not necessarily something that's out there, that's other. And so that doesn't exclude environmental responsibility, because if we, you know, accept that humans are included in that idea, then we become more responsible. So we're definitely in an inspirational environment, but I exercise caution in considering the environment as something that's, you know, we go away and we experience. Like if we can include ourselves in part of that, in part of the collective, which is the world we're living on, then I think, you know, there's going to be better outcomes on so many
Well,
levels.
it's interesting you talk about that notion of the environment being inner and outer. I mean, I'm heavily influenced by, I guess, 3 influences in my life. I'm married into Trobriand Island culture, which is a pre-industrial culture where that's how people are, you know, and it's song and dance and ceremonies, and the said spiritual sort of connections are just part of life. And then I worked with Jilpi Bob Randall, who's an Aboriginal elder, and I met him and helped him write his book, which is published as Songman, and he took me through a whole journey through the Central Desert and up to Kakadu, and he talked about Jerkapa. And what I realised with Bob was Aboriginal people have this incredible sense of interconnectedness with country, with land. Like, country is not landscape to them. You know, Bob would pick up the soil of the country where he was born and say, "This is my grandmother."
Intrinsic to culture as well.
Yeah, and it's like it's family, it's kin. And it was so visceral being with him and feeling that, you know. It was, and then that related a lot to also the Buddhist path I've been on, because there's a famous Vietnamese teacher called Thich Nhat Hanh, and he talks about interbeing. And I guess what inspires me is, how do we celebrate and tell the story of interbeing as the way we are in the world? So I really resonate with what you're saying about that whole idea that it's not, environment's not out there. It's we're interwoven with it.
Absolutely, it's inclusive of all those things. So who is the Wild Mountain Collective for, do you think?
I think the Wild Mountain Collective, I mean, it's for the community, but who participates in it depends on who helps co-create it. I mean, we're sort of grassroots. We're not a funded body. We haven't got a big grant for government to start. So it's a sort of bottom-up organisation that will be co-created by the kind of people that get attracted to it. So we sort of, when we thought about it, we thought about, well, what's a whole lot of different activities we could do? And, you know, what really excited me about meeting you was that it led to the whole idea of this launch event of Encountering the Wild as a multi-arts festival. So tell us about how that festival's working out.
Well, that festival on the 1st of December at Gallery H in Dargan.
Yeah, that one.
The multi-arts festival.
Over in that wild place.
Yeah, that's certainly taken on some momentum of its own, and it will be definitely, you know, a multi-arts event. And so we've got 4 different musical performances. We've got an art exhibition featuring over 50 artworks. There's going to be Tibetan food truck. There's going to be poetry, Aboriginal rock art discussions. So it really is, you know, definitely quite inclusive, and it is really, you know, encapsulating what we're talking about in terms of collaboration.